Welcome to the Academy of Visual Art, Year 1, Mastering the Basics of Drawing. My name is Ben. In this video, I'm going to go over the first 3 books in the curriculum. I consider myself a beginner in drawing. I took one drawing class at a community college years ago and did not do very well. In high school, I studied theater. In the Marines, I studied combat engineering. And at university, I studied film production. Now I'm going to teach myself how to draw from home with 21 books. I put together a library 3 or 4 months ago. It's been sitting on my shelf under my drawing desk. I'm really ready to get into these books and share the process of learning how to master the basics of drawing. So the first book, H.W. Jansen History of Art. This is the second edition, published in 1977. This book belonged to my grandfather. It's really valuable and important to me for that reason. He passed away. And this book kind of changed my life. When I was 18, I picked it up, flipped through the first chapter, and just kind of blew my mind with understanding a whole new perspective on how cultures evolve and how value systems come about and how many of my own beliefs and ideas and ways of thinking about the world were so deeply connected to art and to other, creative people's ideas that kind of spread through images, sculptures, architecture, and all that. So it was a really big eye-opener for me to first come in contact with this book, and now I'm really excited to be able to go through the whole thing page by page. I'm going to read this thing front to back. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to study it. There's tons of drawings or illustrations that I'm going to do drawings of in here. Lots of compositional studies to be done, and not just learning, the timeline, but also learning kind of when technology for drawing, what certain technologies were invented or certain techniques were discovered. All that stuff is going to be awesome to learn. I'm really excited. This is probably going to be one of the most fun parts of this whole process of learning how to draw, is also developing a very broad understanding of the context of art and kind of the story of how art evolved over time. Super fun and interesting stuff. Kind of helps you, I think, understand your place in the world of art, and hopefully I'll find, a lot of inspiring works of art and art movements and styles that I will want to kind of pick and choose the best from history to adopt as my own influences. That's what I want to find. I know I'm going to find some great influences in here. The next category is the psychology of art, and to kick that off, we're going to be reading The Art Spirit by Robert Henry. The art spirit represents the best of the collected words, teachings, and letters of inspired artist and teacher Robert Henry, not sure. Filled with valuable technical advice as well as wisdom about the place of art and the artist in American society, this classic work continues to be a must-read for all aspiring artists and lovers of art. This I'm super excited to get into. I think it's going to really help give me an understanding of the mind of an artist, how an artist thinks and feels, and kind of the emotional journey. I think the history is kind of give me an external view of how events in the world shape art, and this is going to give me more of an internal worldview of how the events in the mind of the individual artist shapes art. So I think combining both a historical perspective and a psychological perspective on art is going to be really powerful at motivating and inspiring. Inspiring, though, for what? For action, for actual drawing, not just theory, not just facts and dates and things like that, but actual, let's get our hands on and do some practice, some practical application. So to kick off that category, I'm using The Practice and Science of Drawing by Harold Speed, another book that was kind of published around the same time as that one. That was, I think, in the 20s. This was published in 1917. I love that time period for books. They're my favorite books usually come from around 1870s to the 1940s. That time period in American history specifically, you had really, really, really intelligent people, like way smarter than anybody alive today. They were discovering things, and all types of intellectual progress was being made in the world, and all types of cultures were coming together at that time. And so there was just a very dynamic time for the mind and for academia, and the authors were still writing toward a general audience. They were writing about big topics or complex topics or highly technical topics like this, but they had in mind the general reader, the general audience. And so I find the books during that time are very easy to digest and not filled with jargon and all types of technical knowledge that basically after the 1950s academic literature becomes super kind of in-depth to the point where you have to kind of be a professional academic to understand what they're talking about. These books, on the other hand, very accessible, very, written in plain English, and just super fun to kind of pick the brains of people who lived 100 years ago. So that's kind of my philosophy with this. On the back here, I love this. He says, much of learning to practice as well as to appreciate art is concerned with understanding the basic principles. So for me, starting as a beginner on how to draw the basics, that's where I want to go. This is it. There's going to be many more books for each one of these categories, and I'll go over those in another video. But these are the books that are going to kind of get us started. So I'll be using these books to teach myself, and I'm going to be documenting the whole process from here at my drawing desk. I'm going to do all the drawings, all the exercises from the practice books. I'm going to be doing compositional studies and drawings from history in chronological order, so that'll be fun. And for the psychology books, I'm mainly going to be looking for kind of motivational quotes, I guess, or words, sentences, and paragraphs that somehow stick in my brain and help me with the kind of psychological problems associated with being an artist. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of things like dealing with resistance, as Stephen Pressfield calls it in The Art of War, or The War of Art. Yeah, I always flip those. But things like resistance, things like that are psychological challenges are going to be kind of confronted and understood and analyzed in the psychology books. The practice books are the techniques, the skills, the hands-on, the putting the pencil and the pen to the paper and moving it around. That's what I'm really excited to learn from the practical books. And putting all three together, I think is going to be a really dynamic way to learn. I think I'm going to read from each book every day and make progress on every category all at the same time. So I'll be reading 3 books basically at a time. And the way I think of it is like when you're studying something like history, you can only learn so much at once, and then you kind of get burnt out. So then switching to the psychology or switching to the practice book is going to help get my mind to kind of feel like we're transitioning and we're getting some freshness, we're getting some dopamine, we're getting some novelty, but we're still making progress on the overall journey of mastering the basics of drawing. So if this sounds like, interesting, I hope that you will pick up some books, follow along. The practice book is actually free. It's in the public domain. The Practice and Science of Drawing by Harold Speed. So that's the first practice book, and it's free. It's online. I think you can get it at the Gutenberg project. I'm not sure. I'll put a link to where you can find the book. But Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited to learn. Um, I'm excited to kind of dive into all these books, and I'll go over the rest of the curriculum in the next video. So see you in that one, I guess, and thanks for watching.